What's going on, everybody? It's Wade with Swamp Donkey Archery. So, if you ever went to select some arrows and you wondered, man, what do all these different numbers mean on this shaft? What's GPI? What does this 400 or 350 mean? Well, this might be the video for you. Y'all stick around. I'm fixing to break down what some of these different numbers mean on all these different arrow shafts. All right, how's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing good today. So the video I'm wanting to do today is I'm going to go through a bunch of different arrow shafts, sizes, spine, explain what spine is, explain what the straightness factor is, and all that. We're going to go through all that. Not going to get in depth about selecting an arrow for you. I just want to explain what do these numbers mean to help you make an informed decision whenever you get ready to go select your own arrow shaft. So before we get into it too deep, y'all be sure and reach down there and like this video, sub to my channel, hadn't already done it. While we're on the subject of arrows, I will be doing a 2,500 sub arrow giveaway. As soon as I break 2,500 subs, we'll do some kind of little contest. And yeah, somebody will win a free dozen custom arrows built by me, and I will send to you. So yeah, so getting into it, there's several different numbers that you see on an arrow shaft. You're going to see the spine of the arrow. You're going to see what straightness it is, and then you're going to see GPI. So we're going to start with GPI, which that is grains per inch. So it's how many grains this arrow weighs per inch of shaft. So years ago, I'm wanting to say it was the IBO that decided they were going to come up, IBO and several bow manufacturers come up with a number to have kind of a standard minimum GPI per pound of draw weight, which wound up being 5 grains per inch of arrow. So 5 grains GPI per pound of draw weight to give you a minimum recommended weight for your arrow. So that, just for information, that's where when you see a IBO speed rating of a bow and it's 345 feet a second or whatever it is, how they got that number was they had an arrow that weighed 350 grains. It was shot out of the bow set on 70 pounds at a 30-inch draw. So that's just a little bit of information for you if you didn't already know it. So, like I said, GPI is grains per inch. It'll vary depending on your arrow. You can get some arrows that's really light GPI, and you get, when you start getting into the heavier, stiffer arrows, you're going to get on up there, 12, 13 grains per inch. Some of the lighter arrows, you're going to see around that 6 grains per inch. There may be some a little bit lighter than that. So keep that in mind when you're selecting a certain weight arrow. So you can kind of calculate what your arrow shaft would weigh if you know your shaft is going to be, 28 inches long, and your GPI is 10 grains per inch. That's 280 grains just for your shaft. And you look at, adding your insert, your screw end tip, your fletchings, and all that, kind of give you a little basis on what your arrow wants to weigh. So if you have a certain arrow weight in mind that you want to do, look at your GPI. And then the next number I want to go over is this number right here, your spine. Usually those are going to be marked in big numbers where you can see them on your shafts. Let's see if I can get this one where you can see it, 300. So this is a 300 spine. These are 400s. Got a 350 right here. Let's see, there's your 350 right here. So the best way I can explain technically what spine of an arrow shaft is how stiff the arrow shaft is, how much flex it has. So the technical definition of your spine of an arrow is you take the shaft, there's a full-length shaft, 30 inches or whatever, you put supports under it at 28 inches, and you hang a nearly 2-pound weight in the middle of it, and you measure the amount of flex that arrow flexes. So there's a couple different videos I just watched. Sean Outdoors does a really good job explaining how they get the numbers on that. So if y'all want to get more depth in that, y'all can definitely go check his video out. But say, for instance, you had this 350 spine arrow right here, and you had it sitting on your little braces right here. You find center of the arrow shaft, you hang this weight on it, and it bends like this. So you're going to measure how far it bent from static to down here, and they have spine checkers and all that to where you can measure it and all. But so this is going to bend, and if you measured it, it would be 0.350 inches. So move your decimal places over a little bit, and that's where you get 350. So it moved 0.35, so 350 thousandths of an inch, with a 2-pound weight on it with your braces right here. So that is a 350. So we're going to grab this 800 right here, this 800 spine arrow, and you're going to put the same weight on it. It means that thing's going to bend way down. So this is what I really wanted to get into here, talking about the number on your spine. Okay, first I want to tell you what it was. Now I'm fixing to explain why I want to explain this. So there's been several times that I've heard people in conversation, whether it was in stores, listening to people trying to select their own arrow, or just people in general conversation coming up with, yeah, man, I'm going to go get me some arrows. I want to go get me a really light arrow, so I'm going to get one of these, 200 grain arrows. And yeah, my bow's going to be super fast. And that's not a 200 grain arrow. That's a 250 spine arrow, which means it's going to be really stiff and it's going to be pretty heavy. So if you're looking at that big fat number on there as being what the weight of the arrow is, that has nothing to do with your weight. That is the spine of your arrow. That's how much flex it's going to have in it. So the lower the number, the stiffer the shaft is. The higher the number, the weaker the shaft is. I think the weakest shaft you can get that I've seen is like a 2000, and these are the little bitty small micro diameters, made for really light pull bows. And then I'm wanting to say the heaviest I've seen is either been a 200. I think there might be a few companies that make a 150 maybe, but that's getting super stiff. So the way you would select your spine, there's several different manufacturers. Just about every arrow manufacturer is going to have its little chart. I'm going to try to find a couple of them, and I'm going to post them right here. And most of these charts tell you if your draw length is this long and you're shooting this poundage bow, this should be the spine arrow that you need. Now, keep in mind, most of those calculations are made with you putting a 100 grain tip on the front and just shooting standard fletchings on the back. When you start adding more weight on the front of this arrow, that changes the dynamics of it a whole lot. So what I've seen happen is a lot of people will buy, say, a 400 spine arrow, and they'll have a 28-inch draw and shooting 60 pounds. That's like, to me, that's like the perfect arrow right there for your weight and your draw length, okay? And everything's shooting good and fine and dandy. We tuned it, set it up and everything with 100 grain tip. And then they decide, you know what, I want to add me some weight up front, shoot a 125 grain tip, 150 grain tip. Well, you just added a whole lot of weight on the front of that arrow. So what happens to that arrow when you shoot with a whole lot of weight on it? As soon as your string starts pushing it forward, it's got more kinetic energy. It's got potential, static energy, whichever you want to call it. My wife's going to skin my head because she's a science teacher, and I just got the energy stats messed up. So, all right. So basically, the more weight you have on the front of the arrow when you release your string, more weight it has, the more it's going to bend. So if we set your bow up and tuned it with all this, with 100 grains up front, and now you got, 150, 200 grains up front, that arrow is going to be a whole lot weaker. Whereas if I knew you was wanting to shoot a whole bunch up front, we're going to I would have set you up with 350 spine arrow, which is a little bit stiffer. So me personally, when I set somebody up with their bow, especially if it's a hunting bow, I always err to the side of the stiffer spine. So if they were like right there on the verge of, say, a 400 spine being all that they need, I'm going to put them on a 350. I want it to make sure that it's going to be stiffer, because you never know when somebody's going to put it. Even a fixed blade broadhead on the front of your arrow shaft is going to weaken the spine more than a mechanical broadhead, because you have more surface area that's having to go through the wind, and it's going to cause more flex on that arrow. So that's what I wanted to get into on your spine. Y'all, that number is not the weight, that is the stiffness of the arrow, okay? So that's what I want to go over on spine. I could get a little bit deeper on it, but I just want to touch the surface on it. Now we're going to move on to the next subject. So now the next subject I want to talk about is the physical size of the shaft. How big or round is it? Now, as far as I know, the smallest diameter shaft that you can get is the .166, which this right here, you .166, or a 4mm shaft. That's how big this shaft is on the outside of it. It's .166 of an inch. Okay, so just know that that's your smallest diameter shaft. Now your next one up is going to be a .204 or a 5mm shaft. Let's see if this one says it on here. This one don't say, but this is going to be your 5mm shaft. Well, y'all see the difference in between the two. Not a significant difference, but you can tell this one's just a little bit bigger than this one. Now they're starting to come up with several different sizes. Easton makes like a 6.5mm and all that. I don't have some of them in here. I'm just wanting to go through the majority of the ones that you're going to see out there. So your skinny or your micro diameter is going to be this .166 4mm, .204 5mm. Then you're going to have some of your oddball ones, and then we're going to go up to your standard size shaft, which is a like a .244, .243. So this is your standard size shaft. So I'm going to put it next to some of the other ones. So you're looking at your 4mm, 5mm, and then your standard diameter shaft. Like I'm just going over size comparison. So once you get past your standard diameter arrow size, now we start moving into, they go from looking at them as a point whatever or a whatever millimeter to they move to 64ths, whatever 64ths. So like my hunting or my 3D arrow this year is a 23 series, so it's a 23 64ths. The size of this arrow, if you use and measure the outside of it, is 23 64ths of an inch. All right, so I want to compare that to your standard diameter arrow, just so you can see. It's one of those nice big fat arrows right there. Okay, so you're not going to hunt with one of these. These are designed more for target, more for 3D. Covering surface area is a primary thing that these bigger arrows are good for. Okay, so your next size up from that is going to be your 25 64ths. So we've got our 23 and 25. Now they do make some 26 64ths. I don't have that, but then you have the Big Daddy log, which is the 27 64ths. So you can, this is the 23, and look at it. Let's put a standard diameter arrow right next to it. Hang on, I'm trying to keep from dropping everything. So here's a standard diameter arrow just for reference. You can see how much bigger this big old fat log right here is. So, and the sole purpose these big fat arrows are is covering surface area when you hit the target. If you've got the ring, you're shooting at it, and you hit like right here with a smaller diameter shaft, or you hit like right here with a bigger diameter shaft, you got more of a chance of cutting your line with a bigger diameter shaft. That is the primary advantage of shooting one of these great big fat logs right here. Now, when you get into these big fat ones like this, you start running out of options for your spine. Most of these are going to come in like a 250 spine. That's what they are. Can't modify it. You can change by adding a little bit of weight to the tip. So that's what I was mentioning earlier. Change the dynamic of how your arrow performs, changing your spine by adding weight to the front or to the back, changes your spine. That's some of that stuff I told you we could get a whole lot deeper into, but I'm just wanting to show y'all this is it. This is what these numbers mean. So the next number that'll be on these shafts that you see that I want to go over, I think you can see it on this one here. Yeah, this number right here. All right, there's a little bitty number right there. It says 0.003. So that means it's a 3000 straightness. So I'm trying to remember the technical, how they define that. But basically, over the full length of the shaft, it's going to deviate from 0 0.003 of an inch over the whole shaft. So there's usually 3 different rankings of these arrows, and most of them, like your most inexpensive or base arrow is usually going to be a 0.006 or a 6,000th straightness. And for most arrow manufacturers are going to have different colored labels for these. Like so like Gold Tip, this is a 6,000 straightness velocity right here. So your 6,000 straightness is going to have your red label on it. And then their 3,000 straightness, which is the next straighter one, is going to have your green label on it. Now their 1,000 straightness, which I don't have one in here, is going to have a gold label. So that's why you see some of these same arrow has different color labels on it. That's the difference in your straightness. Okay. Let's see. So I've got some different victories right here. So this RIP TKO and the green label right here, this is their 3,000 straightness. I think their 6,000 straightness, same thing, red. Okay, and this is their Elite series. So this is the 1,000 straightness from tip to tip. Okay, so when it comes to how much of a difference does it really make between a 3 or a 6,000th and a 1,000th? Me personally, for hunting arrows, if you're going to be shooting a big fixed broadhead, I would not go with the 6,000th straightness just because it's going to have a little bit more variation in how the shaft performs. I would say minimum go with your 3,000th straightness. For the majority of us out there, I would say 80% of us, you're not going to notice a difference in between your 3,000ths and your 1,000th straightness. Us as shooters just aren't good enough to really notice the difference in between that. Me personally, most of the time I run the 3,000th straightness on my target arrows and my hunting arrows. I did play with these TKOs this year. I went with the Elite series, the 1,000th straightness, and I didn't see any performance difference until I got to the further yardage, shooting 50, 60 yards with fixed blade broadheads. It did seem to me the 1,000ths may have shot a little tighter group, but that's just kind of my what I've seen there. So when a lot of people will buy a new bow and they put all this research in which bow they want, which sight, which rest, all that, and that's cool. And then when they go to get some arrows, they just grab a dozen arrows and say, let's go with these. You have to match your arrow to the performance of your bow. Okay, so keep in mind that your arrow selection needs to be just as important as what your bow selection is. So do a little bit of research. Now you know what all these numbers mean. I always err to the side of the stiffer spine. If you're right there on the verge of, being 400 being enough and 350 is just a little too much, I would go with the 350. Same thing, they always personally go stiffer. One other thing I wanted to go over, not going to get super deep in this and all, but this is just something that you hear people talk about, FOC. Okay, what that is front of center. So basically, in layman terms, wherever the center of your arrow is, it is the percentage of weight of your arrow that is forward of center. And basically, that's how I'm going to explain that. Okay, I don't want to get super deep into it, but just know that the higher percentage FOC you have, the further and more weight you have on the front of your arrow, front of the center. Okay, FOC is a good thing. A bunch of arrow weight, in my opinion, is not necessarily a good thing. So, in my opinion, it's just me throwing some random my knowledge out there. So, there is a point to where you can get your arrow too heavy and you start losing performance out of your bow. So, if you've got a bow that's capable of shooting well into 300 feet a second range and you want to build this super heavy FOC arrow, and you get this thing down where it's shooting 200 feet a second, 220 feet a second, and that's not how I like to shoot. Me personally, I shoot a between 65 and 70 pound bow. My arrows are going to weigh anywhere between 450 and 500 grains. That's just how I set mine up, and most of mine have about an 18% FOC. So I just want to throw that out there. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, go to that search bar up there and key in arrow FOC and go get you a cup of coffee, fix you a shot of whiskey, whatever your poison is, because you fixing to go down a rabbit hole and there are so many different things there. Me personally, when I'm building a arrow, I try to look at my arrow build kind of like if you was to look at an engine horsepower torque curve. There's a point to where your horsepower and torque meet. You'll have one coming down, one coming up, and right there where they meet, in my opinion, that's your most efficient point of your horsepower torque curve. So when I'm building an arrow, I want to get my arrow as heavy as I can get it and still get it as fast as I can get it. And for most of the experiments I've done, around that 280 feet a second mark is you get kind of max speed and max kinetic energy or penetration. You start getting heavier than that, you lose speed, gain penetration. Go lighter than that, you get more speed, lose penetration. So there's a whole big debacle on that. Y'all have fun searching for that, going down that rabbit hole. You pick you a good rainy day, you ain't got nothing going on, and I guarantee you could spend 10 or 12 hours watching everybody's opinion of what FOC is. But FOC is a good thing. FOC will increase your penetration. It will increase the consistency and accuracy of your arrows. I've seen that firsthand, but you can go too much. So anyhow, I think that's all I want to cover in this video. I could definitely went deeper into a whole lot of this stuff. I may dive deeper on another day, but I wanted to go over what all these numbers mean to give you a little bit of information for if you didn't already know what this is. Now you know. Take this information, do with it as you please. I hope it was informative to you. Y'all let me know in them comments down there. If you got any questions on anything, let me know. If there's something else on this kind of this subject you would like to see me dive deeper in, let me know. I'll try to do another video on it on a later date. Y'all be sure and go to my website if you need to get a hold of me, swampdonkeyarchery.com. It's got all my contact info there. Y'all don't forget to sub to this channel so you can get have a chance to win a dozen free arrows. And I guess other than that, I guess I'm done. We're going to finish this one up. We're going to edit this video, get it posted for you, and I got some more work I need to do out here in the shop. Because unfortunately, when you own an archery shop, you got work to do. You can't play all the time. You got to work more than what you play. So anyhow, guess that's it. Y'all have a good one. Appreciate all y'all. Love y'all. Hope y'all have a terrific new year. Catch y'all on the next one.